Hello, welcome back to Empowering Women Executives, and I'm Rita Maselli. Today we're going to talk about whether women are naturally bossy. Are they more bossy than men? And is there a gender connection for being bossy? Okay, so we have a lot of good stuff to talk about. Let me start off by saying that there's a campaign called Ban Bossy, and it was started by Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO of Facebook. She, along with a number of celebrities, got together with the idea of banning the word bossy when it comes to talking about little girls. And the idea being that when little girls are labeled bossy, and they're made to feel that there's something wrong with that it affects their ability to be leaders later on. So that's the thinking behind it. So today we're going to talk about some of the information that's out there. And so I want to talk about a project that was done through the Center for Creative Leadership. And basically, the project was about bossiness, and it was about whether there is a gender connection in terms of bossiness. Okay, so let me just go back a little bit to the fact of what people like Sandberg, and I forgot to mention the two other celebrities that come to mind, by the way, that were involved in this program. Beyoncé, whose favorite saying, "I'm not bossy, I'm the boss." They used that in the campaign and it worked quite well. And then also Condoleezza Rice, who was the Secretary of State under Obama. But there are a lot of other celebrities that are involved in this. But for us, we're not interested in the topic because of celebrities being involved or anything else, actually. What we're looking at, why we're looking at this topic, is that I have heard, and I'm sure you've heard, people calling women who have a certain assertiveness about them bossy, and they don't mean it in a positive sense. So bossiness is not considered to be, a positive quality that you have as a leader or supervisor. I want to mention that, well, first of all, how would you know if you're bossy? I mean, there's a difference between being the boss and being bossy. And I was talking about the negative aspects of being bossy, right? So how do we know? I have 6 traits that I'm going to give you, and you can evaluate yourself against those and see, are you bossy or are you just behaving like a boss? And I'm assuming that you're in a boss type position and you're not behaving as a boss, whereas you're just a simple employee somewhere. Okay, so all right, the first trait in terms of whether you are bossy or not is a trait that has to do with controlling others and dictating to others what you want them to do. Now, nobody likes to be dictated to, that I know, and so that is definitely not a positive trait, regardless of whether we're talking about a man or a woman. The second point that has to do with a negative trait is whether a bossy person ignores other people's viewpoints. And that means that basically there's the sense that other people's opinions are not valid, they're not worthwhile. The third trait for a bossy person is being rude and pushy. And you know what I'm talking about. It's the level of politeness is not there, and people sort of barge in and they are not careful about whether they're disturbing anybody or anything. So that's the concept here. The fourth trait of a bossy person is someone who micromanages. The concept here is that it's about control. And so a person who's like that will tell people exactly how to do something. Not what needs to be done, and then leave it up to the person to come up with a way to do it, but do exactly as they want. The fifth trait of a bossy person is a person whose sole focus is on status, power, and authority. They are not really interested in what other people around them are doing. They don't contribute very much to anything that a group does. They are very much concerned about themselves. The last trait, the sixth trait, is that they interact aggressively with people. And we know the difference between aggressive and passive. Normally, when we interact with people, we would do it assertively, not aggressively, and not passively. Okay, so in the project that was done by Center for Creative Leadership, I want to share with you some of the findings that came from that project, because I think they're interesting and they're important for us as women. They found that women are not more bossy than men, but that women are often, behaviors that women have that are acceptable in men and that are not seen as bossy are seen as bossy in women. Actually, women are seen to be twice as bossy in the workforce, in the workplace rather, than men who have the same behaviors. Twice as bossy in the workplace, even though they have the same behaviors as men. They found that there is no connection. In other words, bossiness is not a feminine trait. Bossiness is neither a feminine trait nor a masculine trait. They, both men and women, can be bossy. And actually, men are a little bit more bossy. We're found to be a little bit more bossy than women. But at this point, I want to go back a little bit to the behavior of women, because, especially when they're little girls, because we're talking about the fact that there's no connection here between being female and being bossy. So if there's no genetic connection, in other words, not a question of gender, it usually means it's a question of environment. Now, women, little girls, when they are brought up in the traditionally, and it's true up to now, no matter how much parents want to bring their children up equally and use the same strategies, etc., very often that doesn't happen. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Little girls, when they are playing, they have a tendency to play in smaller groups than boys. Boys like to play in larger groups. Little girls are encouraged to play quietly without causing a lot of noise, without causing problems, and their games are usually non-competitive. When a girl becomes bossy and steps out of line, the other girls, in whatever it is that they're playing, whatever game they're playing, remind her that it's not okay. So stepping out of line, stepping into a new environment, into a new behavior where girls become leaders is not an acceptable behavior for girls. It's girl games in general are played, they're very collaborative, or they get turns being the leader. With boys, behaviors that are seen as bossy in girls are seen as more than normal in boys. So boys are encouraged to stand up for themselves, not to allow other people to push them around, to make people know how they feel, to get up and do it again and keep going. Those are all characteristics that are encouraged in boys. So when you have people like Sheryl Sandberg and Beyonce and Condoleezza Rice and some of the other women who have gotten together, it's because they want to ban the word bossy so that it is not used as a way to control girls' behavior. It's not used as a way to have them feel bad about how they are behaving, even though they might be behaving in a completely acceptable way. Now, you know, societies around the world basically have, generally in mind, a more traditional role for women. That's still true. I wish it were not, but it's still true. But my point now, what is really important, is where do we go from here? Because the reason I bring up bossiness, and I will continue to work with this topic for a while, is that being bossy, which I said earlier on, is not not a compliment when people call you bossy. It's considered a negative. Being labeled bossy actually impacts your chances of being promoted. So this is serious stuff now if we're talking about women executives. And it's serious from the point of view that it will impact both a man who's considered bossy or a woman who's considered bossy. It will impact on their chances of promotion. But it impacts more on the woman's chances of promotion. And that's very important and very critical. So I'm going to leave it here. I will definitely go on with the concept of being, you know, the idea is to go from, instead of being bossy or being categorized as bossy, we want those behaviors to reflect what a boss, a good boss, a boss who cares about his team, who cares about the people he works with, what that boss does. So down the road, I want to try to help you substitute, if you have any of these bossy behaviors, and some of them, you know, are maybe you do. The 6 traits that I gave you before that we talked about, think about them and evaluate yourself. Do you display some of those behaviors? If you do, then it would probably be a good idea to get rid of them, to find ways of behaving differently in a way that will allow you to be promoted. So thank you for being with me today. Please click like if you found that this was of value to you, and share it with your women friends. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. That way you will be with us every week when we have a new topic that we're dealing with. Thank you very much and have a great week. Bye.